This is HBR News number 518. Another day, another far-right trans mass shooter upholding patriarchy, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Honey Badger Radio. I hope you guys are doing well this week and that you're laughing at all of this absurdity so that you are not consumed by it. I'm your host, Brian. I'm joined by Hannah Wallet, and from a vehicle en route to the airport, Mike, who's Dr. Random Cam, who's made it his point to show up, which I think is awesome, and I appreciate that quite a bit.
Today as well, because Lauren happens to be driving.
Yeah, and Lauren is there, like disembodied Lauren is there, so she might say things.
You might hear me cursing at other drivers.
That is right. You guys are in New York.
Yeah. So you'll have to forgive the slightly different audio, but I'm sure that it's worth it to get our take. So anyway, please consider, we have a lot to talk about today, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comment section. On this week's news show, we're going to be talking about, well, basically what we kind of have to talk about, which is this Minnesota mass shooting that happened. Everyone's got their hot takes out, and so I thought we would throw our coals onto the fire as well. Emma Watson has announced her new relationship status as self-partnered and more, so stick around. It's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. So I have here we didn't get into this topic because last time we ended up talking about a bunch of other stuff, and so we never got to this, so I'm going to try and do this again. This is from The Guardian and written by one Van Badham, and it says, middle-aged men are among society's loneliest people. What does that say about patriarchy? So middle-aged men, lonely, men to blame. So if you want to join us for that, I haven't read this yet still. Please consider becoming a Badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com/subscribe. $5 a month will get you into our Discord server where you'll be able to watch all the additional content we have and, basically like hang out with the community. We are also, I think it's next week. We're already like a week away from the meetup, almost a week away, which is going to be in Calgary, Alberta, September 13th. And if you haven't RSVP'd, please do so. Go to feedthebadger.com/events so that you can see us there in person if you wish. I have something planned for a little talk. I think Allison has something planned as well. And Mike, you're going to be there, right?
I am indeed, but I haven't prepared any talks. But I've got a week to do that.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Yeah, you're good for it. So yeah, so that's feedthebadger.com/subscribe to do that. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we've been yeeted from the internet, then please go to honeybadgerradio.com or badgerfeed.com. That's where all of our content lives. It's our archived content lives. All right. So with all that said, let us get into today's stories. All right. Well, we got to start off with this one. There's a lot to unpack here. So on August 27th, 2025, you might have heard, because everybody's been talking about it, a mass shooting occurred at Annunciation Catholic Church and School in Minneapolis, Minnesota, during a morning mass. The shooter, 23-year-old Robin Westman, formerly Robert Westman, a former student at the school who identified as transgender, killed 2 children aged 10 and 8 and injured 18 others, including 14 children, before dying by suicide. Westman, who legally changed their name from Robert in 2020, used legally purchased firearms and fired over 100 rounds targeting the church in a brief but chaotic attack. Police recovered extensive evidence, including weapons, a smoke device, and writings expressing hatred towards everybody, which is Catholics, Jews, and others, with no clear link to their transgender identity. The attack took place at approximately 8:30 a.m. in a South Minneapolis neighborhood, with Westman barricading doors and firing through stained glass windows. The writings, including a manifesto and videos posted on YouTube, which have been taken down since then, so I wasn't able... I know you can get clips on X and stuff. Revealed an obsession with past mass shooters, a desire for notoriety, and personal struggles like depression and regret over transitioning, though these are difficult to tie directly to the motive. The FBI is investigating the incident as domestic terrorism and a hate crime, citing pure indiscriminate hate aimed at Catholics. Authorities emphasize the motive appears rooted in a fascination with violence rather than a specific grievance against the church or school. Media coverage has been polarized. Mainstream and left leaning outlets like the New York Times and the BBC focus on gun control and the tragedy's impact, warning against scapegoating the transgender community, noting trans individuals are not disproportionately involved in such acts. Conservative media, like Fox News and the Daily Wire, highlighted Westman's trans identity and manifesto regrets, linking the attack to mental health issues or gender affirming care. Politicians reflect this divide, so I don't really have to get into the details of that. Public responses include vigils, gun control rallies, and anti-trans protests or commentary on platforms like X, with trans Minnesotans reporting fear of hate crimes rather. The investigation continues with police analyzing Westman's devices and residences. Community responses emphasize support for victims and calls for unity, though debates over guns, mental health, and identity persist. Official sources like the Minneapolis Police Department provide the most reliable updates as of September 2nd, 2025. So I got something to say about this, but I'm going to wait until you guys say what you want to about this unfortunate tragedy.
Before I jump in, you have anything, Mike?
Well, I'd just like to point out that mental illness is a thing, and hate is also a thing, but they are not necessarily the same thing. I'm not saying this guy wasn't mentally ill, but I reckon he's been taught to hate some people, because he does. Quite a whole bunch of them. In fact, it's a random selection of people he seems to hate, including Catholics and Jews and Trump, and but mainly Catholics. I mean, you can kind of tell because they're the ones he killed. And by the way, it's okay to call this one he. I mean, it's always okay to call them what they are, but this guy in particular wanted to be a woman, but he expressed in his manifesto thing the reason he's so depressed is that he realized he'll never be a woman. So it's kind of half transitioned and then half transitioned back, and now he's a quarter something. And yeah, this is more evidence that that kind of shit will mess you up in all manner of ways. Messes you up even more than it messes up the average male, because it's now highly disproportionately, you know, they are overrepresented in mass shootings, like more than any other demographic you could think about. And yeah, to conclude, I think this is more to do with hate than mental illness, but it's not all one and none of the other. I think it's 3 parts hate to 1 part mental illness. I think the mental illness is caused by the hate, to be perfectly honest, and probably SSRIs. There's always SSRIs involved, but yeah, people get in such crazy headspaces because they go through the school system, which teaches them who to hate, and it's, you know, especially men, especially white men, especially straight white men, and so on. So it's no wonder this results in mental illness in quite a lot of straight white men, if you can call him straight. Probably is, but he's been taught to hate straight men. And that, yeah, that results in mental illness, folks. Or maybe it's not mental illness at all, it's just hate piled on top of hate, piled on top of hate, and it gets so bad that it looks like mental illness. But it could just be learned hatred, because that's what people learn in school now. And yeah, that's all I can think of.
Alrighty. My experience is there's only a small amount of difference between learned hatred and some types of mental illness, um, especially the obsessive types. But I will say this: um, it's not indiscriminate if the only religion they mentioned hatred for was Catholic, right? That's not indiscriminate. That's quite discriminate. Nobody else gets the hatred but Catholics in terms of religious beliefs. That doesn't necessarily lead to a conclusion about this individual in particular, especially considering all the other issues. But it is something that I've noticed previously. The media on both sides seems to have an issue saying it's not indiscriminate hatred if you name a group exclusively among other groups of its type and say just these people. It's just that you're allowed to say that about any denomination of Christianity. Whereas if you say that about any other religion, well, then it's religious prejudice. You're not considered to be prejudiced if you say it about Christians. That's just a point, just something that people should be thinking about, because a lot of times there's violent rhetoric influencing people like the shooter. And if you're going to do something horrible and violent that you know people are going to disapprove of, and you want at least some form of lenience, you're going to target the people that you're allowed to hate. You're not going to target the people that you're not allowed to hate. Aside from that, the other thing that needs to be noticed here is how fault is treated in this situation. When I worked in food service, if I made a mistake, or just was deliberately careless with the things I was handling, and as a result, a bunch of the people that I was serving food to got sick, even if they didn't get sick and die, if they just got sick, nobody would come back and say, we need cheeseburger control. Nobody would come back and say, we got to ban beef. Beef causes people to get sick. They would have penalized the restaurant, or in my case, the gas station. They would have penalized me. And if, anybody did die, then there would have been serious repercussions for me and possibly management as well, depending on whether I was following policy or not. When it was a fast food chain, not one that I worked for, but I think it was the 80s when Jack in the Box had the incident. They had E. coli in their beef due to no fault of their own. And they actually killed 5 kids. When you're under the age of 5 and you eat beef that has E. coli in it, E. coli does terrible things to a kid under the age of 5. But beyond what it does to other people, you cannot handle being dehydrated when your body is that little, right? And the restaurant chain almost went completely out of business. They closed all across the country, and they just started coming back in the last few years in areas like mine, which are far away from where the original store is. And a lot of times in restaurants, when that happens, it gets blamed on an individual, or it gets blamed on individuals at a supplier, or it gets blamed on individuals in the meat packing industry, but you never hear it just getting blamed on the food. Nobody wants to ban lettuce, even though you can get salmonella from lettuce. Nobody wants to ban any kind of pet that carries salmonella. Like there's different lizards that people own that carry it. Frogs carry it. Nobody even wants to ban living creatures that another person might control. But when it's something that primarily men use, a tool that primarily men use, and women don't see a direct benefit to them from that tool, like guns or video games or certain types of music, movies, porn, anything like that. Drinks that are considered more manly, like beer. All of a sudden, there is a hue and cry. It's the inanimate object. It's the unintelligent animal, right? This particular type of pet, that particular breed of animal, and so on. We got to get rid of it. We got to ban it. We can't say that people might be responsible for how they use it. We have to say that people can't handle having access to it. If you look at statistics on violent crime in the United States, as opposed to the statistics that you are handed about who engages in gun violence or how many incidents there are in a year, which may number in the hundreds but are not as high as people think. You find out that less than 1% of the population commits violent crimes. All violent crimes, including mass shootings, including all gun crimes, including all sex crimes, including any kind of violent assault, any kind of violent theft that includes an assault. It's all lumped in there together. Less than 1% of the population is responsible for all of those crimes. So to demonize a particular group, even in well, this group is overrepresented among that less than 1% of the population, to demonize a particular sex, to demonize any demographic on the basis of an incident like this is irrational and useless. And yet, what do you have? Gun owners demonized. You have men demonized. You have men's tools suggested to be banned. You have men's interests being blamed on this, blamed for this. And you have both sides of the political fence pointing fingers at each other about ideology, and nobody is bothering to consider, how did this person get from getting born into the world, from the moment that he took his first breath in the world, to I want to kill people? What happened in his life that changed him from somebody who just wanted to be picked up when he didn't feel good and fed when he was hungry and changed when he was wet, to wanting to kill people? And if you want to look at that, instead of blaming inanimate objects or blaming ideology or suggesting that it's because he's male, or suggesting that it's because he's trans, or suggesting that it's because of who he likes or doesn't like, and all of that, everybody with an agenda will smack you down for talking about it, because nobody wants to consider the fact that a huge portion of how this individual ended up making the decision to walk into a place where there were people with a deadly weapon and start firing, one of the biggest influences is somebody that you're not allowed to criticize. Mom, dad. We're allowed to criticize dad, right? But not mom. We're not allowed to suggest that maybe the people who were responsible for raising this individual should have noticed something was wrong and gotten help. We're not allowed to suggest that maybe if this individual was talked into transitioning at school, maybe the people that were responsible for that should have considered his needs instead of using him as a political football, right? We're not allowed to consider that maybe he should have had medical attention 10 years ago instead of waiting to discuss his mental health until after he decided to shoot a bunch of people. Because, we might be blaming some women. We might be suggesting that the individuals who were responsible for his upbringing and his education might have been wrong. Right? The idea that he was far left or far right or somewhere in the middle or up or down. No, man, this dude was sideways. That's why he killed people. And some person in his life should have noticed that before he got to this point and done something about it. And nobody did. And that's probably the biggest shame in this whole situation, because those people would still be alive. And now they're not.
Well, those were children,
Yeah, well,
to be more specific.
that makes it even worse.
Yeah,
they never even
he was
got
targeting
to,
a classroom of children. It was
they never even got to grow up,
Yeah, it was like an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old or something like that.
And so there's a dead 8-year-old and a dead 10-year-old, and based on normal classroom sizes, somewhere between 18 and 28 traumatized 8 to 10-year-old children who will have nightmares about this for the rest of their lives. If they and the rest of the school will too. They'll be traumatized as well, even if they didn't see their classmates die in front of their eyes. But yeah, this individual, at some point, there was a point of intervention that could have happened, and nobody did it. Every adult in this guy's life failed him when he was growing up. Every single one is at fault for this, just as much as he is.
So I just wanted to add some of my thoughts to this. First of all, and I pointed this out when Allison and I talked about this before, what I think is probably a very relevant detail about his life is that his parents divorced in 2013. And his mother, at least, was very supportive of him transitioning, despite the fact that she attended the Catholic Church. By the way, that's not a Catholic teaching at all. So I think there's some issue with his mother supporting him transitioning, which he later regretted, and he said so in his note. And I don't know how much, like, if there was, because there's still things we don't know about, like, whether he actually, like, took any hormones or started any hormone therapy to be transitioned. But let's just back up to the divorce. So his parents got divorced in 2013. He was 23 years old when this happened, and it's 2025. That means that he was about 10 years old when his parents divorced. I think that it's worth pointing out that that could have an effect on a child. On top of that, the mother was supportive, at least. I don't know if the father was, maybe he was too, I don't know, of his, desire to transition. Wherever that may have come from. I don't think it came from the school, but I can't speak to that because I don't know for sure. And there's another thing too, is that if you are starting on hormone therapy, it will have an effect on your mental state. So that's just something that nobody wants to talk about. And on top of that, if he was on any medications, any drugs for any of his any number of mental issues, I don't know if he was on the spectrum or what. I know that he had, like, his videos suggested some condition because he was, like, constantly moving, like fidgeting in the video. I don't know if that suggested anything. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to speak to that. But there's some evidence that he was being medicated in some way, whether it was for the transition or for mental health or both. And I think that when you mess with your hormones, it's I don't think that the science is settled on that. And I think that there are going to be problems. And I think that when you take that and you add on top of that, that this whole, like, gender confusion phenomenon is more of a social contagion than an actual, like, anomaly of that has like a, like some basis on. I mean, there are some people who legitimately have, gender dysphoria, whatever, and they find ways to cope. They either try to like live as the gender they were born, or they transition. But I don't think that's what's happening, especially to the young people like Zoomers and maybe even Gen Alphas. They're just jumping on board with this whole thing, right? And a lot of them are men, or their parents push it on them, or their teachers push it on them, or media does it. They make it trendy, they make it like a fad. And a lot of men that are, especially young guys, that are looking for a positive identity to associate with masculinity because we demonize it so much everywhere. Some of them go down this road. They're like, well, if men suck so much, I think I'll live as a woman. And that's something that legit happens. And then it turns out that that's worse for them. It's probably a living hell. And maybe they lash out at the world for it. And, I think that that's entirely possible. There's also a trend of, well, there was a pattern of like transgender shooters, right? That's been coming up. If you guys remember, we've covered a couple of these. And I think that some people try to connect the dots and say, oh, that there's like some sort of concerted effort, or that this is some kind of inevitable outcome of transitioning. I think we can, safely say that that's not the case. This guy in particular is, I think that he put together a pretty schizophrenic manifesto so that people will be talking about this for a long time and trying to figure out motive and all of that. And I don't know that we're really gonna know anytime soon, at least anything very specific. But I did talk with BX, who's Bex on X, and Bex is basically like a pro Second Amendment advocate that also does a lot of research into extremist networks. She reached out to us once. Some people call her Sundress Mom or something like that. I don't know, but she reached out to us once a while back to talk about how she found out that a lot of like manosphere people or manosphere adjacent people like us were being essentially on a watch list from the FBI and the CIA and various other three-letter agencies. And she brought that to our attention because she, thought we should know, because she doesn't support the government essentially surveilling us. And since then, I've had her on the show, and she's talked about, these sort of satanic cults. There's these satanic cults like 764, which is a thing that since she's talked to us, she's actually been on mainstream news. I think she was on CBS, and she's appeared on, a number of other sort of higher profile, channels to talk about this stuff. And so since Bex has been like kind to us, I occasionally reach out to her and see how things are going. And I messaged her and I said, what do you know about this recent shooting? Because she has a rule, it's the 48-hour rule, where she doesn't report on anything until 48 hours. And then like, usually by that time, people have calmed down a bit, and you can like get the misinformation or the gun jumping, sometimes literally, out of the way, and like get to what's going on. And this is what a summary of her Substack where she goes into this. So she said that she contrasted the rapid spread of misinformation linking Westmen to groups like 764, which is a child exploitation network, and O9A, Order of the Nine Angels, which is a satanic accelerationist cult. And there are accelerationists all over the internet. We've talked about this with other people like Namacates and some of the incel forums. They have people that go there, they're looking for men who, don't feel like they have a purpose, they have no place to be a part of, they're isolated, they're atomized, and they use them to do like extreme stuff, like essentially gives them a sense of purpose. Hey, join Antifa. Hey, join an Islamic, like an Islamic nation, or join this neo-Nazi group. And a lot of them will join multiple groups because they're just looking to see where they can fit in, and it doesn't even have anything to do with their necessary ideological belief system. They just want to be a part of something. They want their heroic narrative, as I say. A lot of men want that, and especially men who don't have fathers in their life because they're like rudderless and they're looking for something, and nobody in the mainstream cares until they like shoot up a school or kill themselves in some spectacular fashion. Then they become important, and that's why I think some of this stuff happens. So she said that as we know, let me just read what the summary I have here. In Rupnow and Henderson's cases, these are two other mass shootings that I believe were connected to these cults, like 764 and the Order of Nine Angels. The author struggled to highlight these connections amid partisan noise, but by Westman's incident, public assumption of ties to such networks was immediate, fueled by viral but unverified claims, like a false Skibbity Farms account or misidentified 09 or 09A symbols. That's Order of Nine Angels. The author debunks these, emphasizing the need for verified evidence to avoid derailing investigations, while noting Westman's manifesto and gear featured obvious satanic imagery. So there were, pentagrams, and I think in the notebook there was a drawing of, I think it was the person buying a gun from Satan. Again, who knows what that means, like if they're legitimately a Satanist or not. Cyrillic aesthetics and true crime community references like a KMFDM shirt and Columbine nods, but no direct 764 or 09A links. Westman is compared more to the 2023 Covenant school shooter Audrey Hale, both transgender with anti-Christian grudges, minimal online footprints, and long-planned attacks, than to Com Network cybercriminal influence shooters. The author's BX's conclusions are that as of 48 hours post-shooting, no concrete evidence ties Westman to Order of Nine Angels, 764, or LARPer core groups, despite her COM-adjacent TCC involvement and nihilistic violent extremist traits. This person was definitely a nihilist, like shooter obsession and anti-Christian taunts. Westman likely drew from broader online fringes, glorifying violence, but rushed speculation harms truth-seeking. The author will report any FBI confirmed links. Solutions to online radicalization lies in education, mental health support for vulnerable youth, and awareness, not censorship or gun control. Gun rights must remain universal, rejecting calls to restrict them for transgender people or SSRI users, as this blames demographics and tools rather than untreated mental illness and subversive influences. Monitoring sites like Skibbity Farms is crucial to preempt future threats. And I would add to that as well, there's a lot of feminizing chemicals and elements in our water, our air, our food, and everything. And I think that it's hurt men and women across the board, but I think that certain people who alter their hormones or their brain chemistry further, it can actually have more deleterious effects, I believe. So I think that, we should be talking about, like Hannah said, root issues like, what was up with his kid's upbringing? What did his mother teach him? She was the one around him all the time. Why did they get divorced? I couldn't get information on what the divorce was about, like whether there was abuse or what, maybe allegations were made. I have no idea. And I don't know if anything new has come out. If you guys know anything, leave a comment or say so in the live chat. And then there also should be a conversation about, what are the drawbacks of these mind altering drugs, I think a lot of people have tried to warn us about this many years ago. I remember a really viral Tom Cruise clip where he talked about this and he was dismissed as crazy. And I'm only at this point in my life, that only makes me think that he was onto something and they didn't want him to talk about it. And I think that we're looking at, we're sort of reaping the spoils of our, let's say, desire to blind ourselves to that. And I don't think that, it also just kind of starts from one simple premise, is that, men have a makeup, we have a hormone profile, we have a certain biology that is not what women have. And we have been just like, damaging that a lot. And that's why I often say, if you can, guys, and I know this is like maybe a little bit personal or maybe a little bit, I don't know, like I don't want you to see it as shameful, but you should check your testosterone levels, because if your testosterone levels are low, you're going to be, not only is it going to affect your mood and your personality, but it's also going to affect your immune system and your ability to resist sickness. And I think that our testosterone, like on a chemical level, like down to the bottom, has been under attack for a long time. So that's what I would say about that. And thank you to BX for sending us the Substack and like turning me on to that. So anyway, that's all I got to say.
I just want to reiterate how much the school system is to blame for this. Even though a school got shut up, am I victim blaming the school? No, the victims were children. I'm blaming the school system for reasons that should be quite obvious. Why do you think there are so many school shootings? Especially kids shooting up their own schools. You don't get shootings in amusement parks or bowling alleys or arcades or shit like that because these are fun places to be. People don't resent fun places, but they grow up resenting their school because they have a really bad time. Lots of us do. Even back when I was in school, it was a friggin' nightmare because you get shoved in a prison with a load of kids who don't give a shit about you, and some people grow up never. Well, a lot of people grow up resenting schools. Kids say all through their time in school, "I hate this. I don't want to go to school. Why do I have to go to school? It's shit. Everyone hates me." And in some cases, it gets so bad that when people get filled with all this hate, the first place they think of taking it out on is that hideous building that I was forced to go in, and they even resent children and even hate children because they had such a bad time in school. So yeah, it's never been a better time to homeschool your kids, folks. Not just because it's the best way to keep them safe from school shooters, because it's the best way to prevent them from becoming school shooters.
Yeah.
And I think I'll leave it there.
All right. Well, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I look forward to your thoughts on that. And we're gonna move on. Oh, I want to show you something else. There is also like an element of I think it I don't know how big it is, but there is a radical violent element of the trans community, and it's really hard to tell like how much it is and where, because the lines around when someone is legitimately trans or whether larping or whether they're just a drag queen or whether they're just gay, that's all just becomes so blurry at this point, or if they're a pedophile, that you can't really like pin it down. And I think that's part of the point, is this confusion and this ambiguity. But there are definitely some that would call themselves trans activists, I guess, that are legitimately like, okay with violence. Maybe they don't engage in it, but there's definitely like a lot of let's say antagonizing behavior and rhetoric that comes out of there. So people in the vertical chat are really confused. I just want to clear up, guys. I am joking when I say this is a joke when I say this is another far-right trans mass shooter upholding patriarchy. I think that should be obvious, but apparently you guys need me to spell it out. So yes,
people don't
it's a
understand
joke.
sarcasm anymore.
No, they don't understand. Yeah, they can't read
And
sarcasm.
it might even be because of that blurring of lines, which I think that blurring of lines was quite intentional.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, I mean, Gen Xers will remember when both transgendered people and drag queens would get upset if you didn't know the difference.
Yeah.
They would actually get really upset if you didn't know the difference. And, they really would get upset if you didn't know that not all people who are drag queens or transgender are gay, as in comparison to their biological sex. Like they would be, that was really an offensive assumption to make. And then you also had, very sort of strict, like if you haven't gone through the procedures, the surgeries, if you're not on hormone therapy, don't call yourself trans. You're just drag. And that was very It was very offensive to indicate that somebody who just dressed up and called themselves trans and didn't use hormones and didn't have surgery, like, even if they didn't always have the bottom surgery, because the bottom surgery is very complicated and does um, leave somebody with really injured body parts, especially if they ever wanted to eat trans. But yeah, it still was considered, you're LARPing. You're not really, one of them. And now all of a sudden, you can't suggest that somebody isn't trans because their characteristics are descriptive of somebody who is a cross dresser as opposed to being trans. And you can't suggest that somebody isn't trans because they're kind of just LARPing. And you can't suggest that there's anything wrong with um, pretending to be trans for a little while and then not being trans, and saying you're the same as somebody who's actually suffered gender dysphoria, and the medical profession has told them that this is the best way to treat it. Which even now, it used to be you could at least acknowledge that maybe this isn't the best way to treat it. Maybe if somebody has gender dysphoria, there might be less intrusive, less dangerous, and more mentally healing ways to treat it than changing their body.
Yeah.
Right? But because of all of the political activism involved, we now have this situation where a person can go full on past everything that people have ever been comfortable with into some strange area of, like, wearing a dog mask and parading around in bondage gear in public in a place full of children, and say you have a prejudice if you think that that behavior is inappropriate, crossing boundaries, crossing lines, shouldn't be inflicted on the people around them. The same thing that you would say to a straight couple that paraded down the street in bondage, spanking each other's butts and stuff like that. Nobody would accept that, right? But because it is politically incorrect to criticize somebody for being gay, or criticize somebody for being trans, or criticize somebody for cross-dressing or anything like that, you now get to use, you're just saying that because if they do something that anybody would not accept, if a straight couple did it.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, that's this situation. I'm sure this person had that going on as well, and probably the last few shooters that have been trans have had the same thing, where they did things that anybody else would have been called out for, or somebody would have maybe suggested that anybody else needed help because of those symptoms. And particularly in their school, the adults probably did nothing because you can't say anything about them because they're trans.
Yeah. All right, well, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. Going to move on to the next story, but I did get a super chat, so I'm going to read that one really quick. Master Rogue gave us $5. Thank you, Master Rogue, and says, if they caught me, then they put me in a cell with 20 locks unless I can pin it on Jack in the Box. I guess that's a song lyric. I don't really know. All right, I don't know what you kids listen to these days. So we're going to move on to the next story. Thank you guys so much, and I look forward to your comments on that story. And if we get like more information out of BX or something, I'll follow up. But I don't know what we're gonna learn, so we'll see. All right, so this created a stir in the, let's say, the left side. A Wired article published on August 27th, 2025 by Taylor Lorenz, no less, exposed the Chorus Creator Incubator program, which is a secretive initiative funded by the 1630 Fund, a major liberal dark money organization. The program offered Democratic-leaning social media influencers payments ranging from $250 to $8,000 a month to bolster progressive messaging online, with over 90 creators involved, boasting a collective audience of more than 40 million followers. Contracts reviewed by Wired require participants to maintain secrecy about their funding and involvement, prohibit using program resources for unauthorized political content without prior approval, and mandate routing interactions with politicians through Chorus. High-profile influencers such as Olivia Juliana. You guys remember Olivia Juliana was supposed to be the what was she, like the queer woman of size or something that was supposed to be talking to like men and trying to get them to vote, for Kamala Harris or something. David Pakman, who claims to be a centrist but obviously is not. Leigh McGowan, politics girl, never heard of her, and others who must attend advocacy training, messaging check-ins, and events. The 1630 Fund, founded in 2009 as a counter to conservative dark money like the Cook Network, has funneled hundreds of millions to left-leaning causes without disclosing donors, allowing it to bypass Federal Election Commission reporting requirements. The response has been sharply divided and polarized. Conservative outlets like the Daily Caller and Headline USA amplified the story as evidence of hypocritical Democratic astroturfing, while Reddit communities such as R True Reddit and R Politics debated its implications, with some viewing it as a necessary catch-up to Republican media strategies and others decrying it as manipulative. Progressive influencers and co-founder Brian Tyler Cohen issued strong rebuttals, with Cohen releasing a video on August 29th calling the article misleading and riddled with factual inaccuracies, framing Chorus as a nonprofit scholarship and mentorship program for independent creators rather than a partisan pay-to-play scheme. Chorus itself disputed the secrecy claims, of course they did, stating creators are free and encouraged to discuss their involvement and face no content restrictions. Though it did not address specific contract clauses. Wired added an editor's note on August 28th clarifying details after feedback from a lawyer involved in a Zoom call. Yes, these claims are heavily contested, particularly by those directly involved, interestingly enough, who argue the reporting sensationalizes a legitimate support program for creators while ignoring smaller practices or similar practices on the right. Critics like Cohen accuse Lorenz of bias, noting her funding ties to similar dark money sources, so that's great. He exposed her connections, like the Ahmadiyar group, which supports Wired, and highlighted that creators can and do criticize Democrats freely. Some influencers like V. Spahar and Kat Abu Gazella complained about unauthorized use of their images in fundraising materials, lending credence to ethical concerns, but others, such as Lauren Piretra, defended the payments as fair compensation for unpaid work. Broader discussions on platforms like Slashdot and r/neoliberal questioned the ethics of non-disclosure agreements and FFC evasion, but acknowledged dark money's bipartisan prevalence, with no formal investigations announced as of September 2nd, 2025. And I just want to add to this as well. I think Taylor Lorenz may have, there might be a little bit of infighting going on there on the left with the progressives. I think Taylor Lorenz, because she wrote for, I think, the New York Times, and she is kind of notoriously disliked by everybody. And I think that she's just sort of lashing out and, trying to start shit. But the other thing I'll say too is that while I know that these people were coached on, talking points, I don't think they were, let's say, people who didn't believe what they were supporting. So I think that's a misleading thing that I think a lot of people on the right are doing wrong when they say, oh, these people don't really believe it. Because I think they do. I think that if you're going to invest in people to send out your message or blow your horn for you, it's probably a lot easier if they're people who are already inclined to support your sort of side of the political aisle, so to speak, if they're already feminists, which is why I picked this story, because we've talked about at length how many astroturfed activist feminists there are on the internet that are paid by dark money to engage in debates on larger platforms like the Whatever podcast or something like that. And they even come out later and say, yeah, I got paid by Biden Harris. I got paid by USAID. I got paid by these NGOs. So to learn this is not really shocking, but I thought it was, worth pointing out because I think more and more people are learning this. So that was basically my the thing I wanted to share. And just real quick for you guys that are watching, if you want to send us a message, be sure to do so. Feedthebadger.com/just a tip or a super chat or a Rumble rant. And I'll be sure to read it after we're done talking about the story. Okay. So anybody else got thoughts on this?
And before
Hannah?
I jump in, Mike, you got anything?
I got nothing. Taylor Lorenz bores the shit out of me, and I want to die. On you go.
So, with regard to the whole dark money thing, I happen to recall, recently there was that allegation against right wingers, right, from with this Russian money, and
Oh yeah,
when
RT was like Tim
right,
Pool, Lauren
right,
Chen, yeah.
and when people started talking about it, and it came out that the people involved, the people who were accused, didn't even know that they were being funded in this manner. Like it was run in a way that they didn't know the money came from Russia, and they didn't really have any connection to the funders, and they weren't asked to say anything or told to say anything, and it didn't seem to be reliant on what what they said. Um, the left still went ballistic with, "Oh, they're being bought off. They don't believe any of this. They're just paid propagandists, and they're breaking the law. They should be arrested for violating election laws, and just everything they could think of to accuse, to present this as some sort of nefarious, like the right is a the whole right wing is a Russian conspiracy, like anything that's not super far left is part of the right wing, and no matter what was said in terms of this wasn't even direct, this wasn't even, there was no communication, there was no way for them to be like, well, we need to say these things because we won't get paid if we don't. you know Nobody would take that seriously, nobody would accept that, and the upshot ended up being that there was this consensus among the left. We just proved the whole Russian conspiracy, the whole debunked Russian conspiracy claim, blah blah blah, right? In the
Yeah.
meantime, they've been accusing the right of all kinds of dark money shenanigans for years without evidence, and assumed that that proved all of that as well. But when anything is brought up about left wing dark money, even sort of gray money, like comes from George Soros, that everybody knows about because it's done in public, there are pathways you can trace if you actually feel like it. Plus the establishment money that goes into all things left wing, including banks donating to feminist organizations and so on. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist for talking about that. What is wrong with you thinking that that has any influence or, means that the feminism or that the feminist establishment is part of the political establishment and part of the business establishment, part of the economic establishment, right? The financial establishment. No, no, it's all bullshit. They just merited that money because what they're doing is right. And you're a conspiracy theorist for even bringing it up. And
Yeah.
here we have what is essentially another Patreon for just people in the left wing. And it is filled with examples of what they would call dark money if the right was doing it. And the reality is, anytime one side has any flow of money related to any discussion, any talk, any news reporting, any commentary, anything, the other side is going to accuse wrongdoing. They're going to make all kinds of claims about conspiracies, and back and forth will happen about, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist and bullshit. And when you get to the truth at the bottom of it, there are people on both sides who are heavily funded by the establishment. And then there are people like us. We don't
Yeah.
make a lot. We get we get a little bit of help from individuals who are fans, who are not part of the establishment. They're just regular folks. They work together by each person, helping out with $1 or a $5 or a regular small uh, payment through Patreon or through honeybadgerbrigade.com, through feedthebadger.com. But aside from that, like, we are pretty much ignored by the establishment in terms of money, and we don't we don't really go seeking funding from banks and the Ford Foundation and the Carnegie Foundation and all those guys who do fund some of these other people. We look for listeners. We don't have ads, right? We look for listeners. We look for people who really believe in what we believe in, and we've been able to keep our nose clean because of that. Um, so, you just kind of have to, anytime you see an influencer out there that's big, that has a huge audience, that gets promoted by establishment media, especially if you see them um, guest starring on any kind of mainstream establishment commentator show or anything like that, everything they say, take it with a grain of salt, research it, and maybe consider that it might be either promoted because of the ideology that it's attached to, or stated by the individual because of the dollars that it's attached to. And listen to smaller creators like us. Share our stuff, right? Boost our reach, and don't necessarily make us gospel either. Question everything. Um, Independently verify. Read everything you can get your hands on about these subjects, and inform yourself.
Yep.
But definitely never trust a big platformed, establishment fed, establishment featured commentator, because frankly, you're dealing with somebody that's not trustworthy. And that's true. That's not just true on the left. It's obvious on the left, but it's also true on the right.
Yeah. All right. So I got a super chow. I'm gonna read that out. Meredith G, thank you, gives us $5 and says, HBR News number 518. So we have a situation where a young man's family breaks apart due to divorce. The SSRI problem only brings up the issue that this young man was pill milled. Don't deal with the problem, but push medication on him so he will behave.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the second incident where there is evidence of a shooter being interested or obsessed with other mass shooters. While his target was a Catholic church, it's an easy target when the media and culture demonizes it. Yeah, we don't get as upset unless it was like a black church, and then that because they wanted to make this like about the kid being white, or whatever, but they couldn't really make that stick. So,
The Columbine shooters, by the way, were also obsessed with other mass shooters, and I think if you look at some of the other mass shooters' histories, you find that actually they were, if not obsessed, at least fans of other mass shooters. That's
yeah,
a thing that was noticed clear back in the 80s. And it's there was a young lady who had a particularly fucked up youth who is thought of as the first school shooter. There were school shooters before her, but she was the first school shooter to be widely reported in the media as a school shooter, and they sort of coined the phrase because of her and kids like her who just the reporting was so widespread. I don't remember her name, but I remember the name of the band that made a song about her. She was asked why she did what she did, and she flippantly answered to the reporter, "I don't like Mondays." And
Yeah.
the Boomtown Rats in the UK. This school shooting happened in the US, right? She stood in her bedroom across the street from a school that she didn't even attend, and just shot. She just picked off kids at the school.
Yeah.
But in any case, the Boomtown Rats made this song out of her statement, and the title of the song was "I Don't Like Mondays." Um, that reporting led to, it wasn't something where they've blamed other school shootings on this, right? Oh, these people would never have thought of this if this girl hadn't been widely reported on. But it was encouragement.
Yep.
When you have notoriety for something like that, people who are similarly disturbed with similar violent impulses due to similarly dysfunction caused as anger,
Yeah.
they may decide to manifest it in a similar manner, especially if they are seeking fame. And I think that may have been like this. This guy may have still been, he may have exploded in some other way, if not for the fact that he knew this was a pathway to fame.
Yeah, I mean, most people who are struggling with this kind of stuff, most men just kill themselves. And we don't really pay attention until they kill a bunch of other people and then themselves. Then it becomes a problem that we have to address, and it's usually misdiagnosed. And the cure is also wrong. It's usually like, ban the guns, ban this, ban that, ban the video games, and there's no like, wait a minute, how did we get here? And that's like the most important question that people should be asking. But anyway, we have to move on. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I look forward to your thoughts. Thank you, Meredith, for the super chat. Okay, a little bit lighter news. Also, real quick, I think it's funny that not Tommy, what's her name? Lorenz. I almost said
Taylor
Sophia
Lorenz.
Lorenz. Taylor
You're thinking of
Lorenz.
Tommy Lauren.
Yeah, Tommy Lauren, and then I said Sophia Loren, which is no,
Yeah.
Sophia Loren is like a bombshell. But yeah, that Taylor Lorenz like did this. I think it was just like a spiteful Mean Girl thing, and it just created the shitstorm. And I think it's hilarious. So like, let's make some popcorn and watch the fireworks. So anyway, Emma Watson, this is a little one, but I thought it was funny. And there's something about it that's kind of interesting too, because this is like a kind of cope that nobody really wants to fess up to. So I'm going to like bring this up. Okay. Emma Watson, you might know, actress best known for her role as Hermione Granger in the Harry Potter series, first introduced the term self-partnered. So she has come out as self-partnered in an interview with British Vogue ahead of her 30th birthday. She explained that she had struggled with societal expectations about milestones like marriage, children, and career, which caused her significant anxiety. She rejects the conventional happy single label as insincere for her, stating, "It took me a long time, but I'm very happy being single. I call it being self-partnered." The phrase quickly went viral, sparking discussions on redefining singlehood and challenging stigmas around women being unmarried. Notice it's women specifically. In a follow-up Vogue interview, she clarified her meaning, emphasizing that self-partnered isn't solely about celebrating singledom. At 33, she reflected on personal growth post-30, saying, "Getting to the point when I was 30, I was realizing, oh, maybe I figured out some things about how to care for myself better, maybe quite well, actually, and taking pride in that." She highlighted the value of self-care and building community, especially after COVID-19, noting, quote, "Coming out of COVID, I really understood the importance of building community, having community, and investing very intentionally time and energy into that. Recent articles, such as those from Times of India and Lad Bible, have revisited the term in light of ongoing cultural conversations about independence for women, often tying it to Watson's advocacy for women's autonomy." So what is self-partnered? It's female incel, but I'll read this definition anyway, but that's what it is. Self-partnered refers to a state of fulfillment and self-reliance where an individual prioritizes their relationship with themselves, viewing it as a primary partnership rather than temporary or deficient status, like single, because it's not icky. That single's icky, right? It emphasizes personal development, emotional independence, and contentment without needing a romantic partner to feel complete while still allowing for dating or relationships. Clinical psychologist Carla Marie Manley, ironic, describes it as investing time in self growth to achieve wholeness, applicable to both singles and those in partnerships. Watson's use of this term challenges traditional narratives that equate women's value with romantic coupling, promoting self love as empowering and provocative. Critics have noted it as a nuanced evolution from terms like sologamy. Did you know sologamy? Do you know what that is? That's self marriage. Reflecting broader
Yeah.
shifts towards individuality in younger generations, though some may view it as overly semantic or evasive of basically just being single. And I also want to note that there were other people who have come out as self-partnered. Lizzo, for example, not a joke, it's true. Lizzo is self-partnered. There is Selena Gomez was self-partnered after she broke up with Justin Bieber, and Anita Sarkeesian is self-partnered. If you guys don't know who Anita Sarkeesian is, I will not bore you with the details. But so there you go. Take that, patriarchy. I'm alone, and it's okay. That doesn't make me a loser. So, okay,
So this is something that I gotta jump on first.
okay,
All
yeah,
right.
go ahead.
There is no such thing. None of the celebrities that are saying this mean it. It has absolutely nothing to do with their lives. They don't give a rat's ass about whether they're partnered with somebody or not, because they're all narcissists. But it does put somebody whose name hasn't been in the news cycle for a while back up into the top of the reporting circles so that
Yeah,
you will hear their name. And the evidence that I have that that is what she is doing is the fact that in 2019, before COVID, NBC published an article. Emma Watson says she's partnered. Here's what that means and why it's not a bad idea. So 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 6 years ago, she did this,
yeah.
right? And then, if I remember right, the next year she got the part as Beauty in the live action Beauty and the Beast.
Uh,
Like
yeah.
somewhere
I mean,
shortly thereafter, like
yeah,
she did it, and then she got shortly thereafter she got a movie part, right? So she's putting her name out there to get people to see. Oh, look, Emma Watson made the news, and I mean she's done this with other things like getting involved with feminism, doing the whole he for she thing, and blah blah blah. But it's really um, being able to do something that is not supposed to be all that controversial. People are like supposed to just kind of look at it and go, yeah, whatever, meh, right? And um, it sounds like something positive to say that you are focusing on personal growth and blah blah blah. So it's not getting half the country angry
yeah. It
at
is the kind
you
of thing
for
you would see
something,
in the impulse aisle, like on a Us magazine at the
right?
grocery store. You know, like
Right?
some
And
actress you haven't seen in a while, and they'd be like, so and so on focusing on the self and like personal growth and their struggle, and
right,
it's supposed to get you to buy the magazine, basically.
right. So essentially, folks, this is an ad, and
Yeah.
she got MSN to run this ad for her. She got Upworthy to run this ad for her. She got Instagram to run this ad for her. She got Facebook to run it for her. She got X to run it all over the place. If she's really lucky, it'll trend, right? It'll really get her um some press. She got Reddit to run this ad for her by people talking about it. She got every major news outlet, ABC, NBC. I think I already mentioned PMS, NBC, or yeah. She
MSDNC or
yeah,
MSNPC.
MSNPC, but she got Yahoo. She got people to write blogs about it. She got us to talk about it. Like, so it's a pretty effective ad, and she didn't have to pay a dime for it. Not one thin dime. And so everybody that's posted about this on social media, y'all are posting an ad. Like that's it. That's all this is. It's not even ego. It's not even cope. It's an ad.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Should we? I got a super chat from Zaranx. He gives us 5 and says Watson is not the first to do the self-partnered bit. Don't know why it's news. A number of women have married themselves. Some married their pets too. Yeah, I thought it was funny because again, like, not that I think there's anything, I don't know, worth celebrating to just be like alone, but it's funny that when women are in basically going MGTOW, there's
Yeah.
like all of this press around it. And when men go MGTOW, they're shamed. They have to go back to the plantation. Like, they don't even like that MGTOW avoid relationships and marriage. They can't stand that, even though they don't really want them around. They don't want them in their lives. But, women like this, or Anita Sarkeesian, who I said, she married herself for her birthday. And it's just like, yeah, that's just kind of sad. Like, it's sad that you're creating fake press so that you can be relevant, because that's ultimately all it is. And I think it's kind of sad. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think it's sad. I think, well, it's like you said. She's a female incel. I mean, if a man said any of the shit that she's on about, everyone would just go, "You're an incel, bro.
Yeah.
Just window dressing." And even I would go, "Bro, you're just pretending not to be an incel." But the mental gymnastics women will do to just avoid the notion that there is such a thing as a female incel. And she's not really an incel, because she could very easily find a man. She could
Yeah.
find one anywhere. She just can't find one who's good enough for her, because she
Yes.
hates men. She
That's what I think it
hates men,
is.
probably always has, and the richest, most handsome guy in the world would never be good enough for her. And there's a male loneliness epidemic for the same reason, because men can't find women who can find a man who's good enough for them.
Yeah.
This sort of thing is all over the place now,
Yep.
and that's kind of the female equivalent of an incel. Although, as I've often said, it's not femcel, it's succel, because the female equivalent of an incubus is a succubus, and so a
Mm.
female incel is a succel. In fact, she's just a
Oh, that's
succubus.
pretty good.
I think she's just a succubus, and so I'd like to thank her for staying away from men, for staying away from my precious gender. Because if she did have a boyfriend or a husband, she'd ruin his fucking life and make him miserable and probably kill himself. So it's not sad. I think I'm glad. I'd like to thank her, and I'm happy for her, and I'm happy for the
Mm-hmm.
man whose life she has not ruined. All the
Yeah.
men's lives who she has not ruined. Thank you, Emma, for everything. And stay the fuck away.
She for she.
Yes.
All right. Well, let us know what you guys think about the Emma Watson. Are you happy for her? Are you gonna tell her to go queen? Let us know in the comments. I think I've read everything. So we're
I'm
gonna get to the
expecting
last
her
story.
to be announcing a movie part sometime in the next couple
Oh, probably.
months
Yeah.
or the next year, because I'm sure that this was angling for attention, and then
Well,
next thing you know,
we
like I
had
said, it's an ad.
a friend of the channel, Lisa Brighton, who posts a lot on X about men's issues. She used to work in journalism for like these kind of Hollywood magazines, and she told us that everyone who's a celebrity, they call paparazzi to get pictures of them and to like put them in various, exposés or whatever, and allow them to speculate, because sometimes they just get a picture of somebody and they'll Photoshop it and then put it out and say, is so and so, struggling with cancer? Do they
Or
have like a
they
love
catch 'em-
child? And the
catch
point of
them
it is to essentially
mid-sneeze
keep them in
and
the news
yeah,
so
they're
that they
on
might get
drugs.
apart. So yeah, that's all it
Yeah.
is. Like actors are the big, like they can be some of the biggest sluts when it comes to looking for work. I've known actors. I worked in theater, and
Yeah.
you know, not, I mean, they can be shameless. So, and I think the Hollywood people are probably the worst of that. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments, and we're moving on to the last one. Okay, so this was an Atlantic article, which I thought was interesting. So there's an Atlantic article called "The New Marriage of Unequals" that was published in March, so it's a little older, and it examines the growing phenomenon of hypogamy. I don't know, in
Hypogamy
heterosexual
would probably
marriages.
be right because hypergamy is its
Yeah,
opposite.
yeah. Hypogamy in heterosexual marriages where women are increasingly partnering with men who have less education than they do, marking a reversal from mid 20th century trends towards educational equality. Homogamy in couples, well, we're way past that now. Drawing on sociological and economic research, this piece argues, so this is contestable, okay, that this shift is largely driven by demographic imbalances. There are now significantly more college educated women than men in the US, rather than deliberate preferences for marrying down. For instance, data from sociologist Christine Schwartz shows that in 2020, 62% of educationally mismatched marriages were hypogamous, up from 39% in 1980. While Yale researcher Clara Chambers notes that stable marriage rates among educated women indicate they're adapting to partner availability. Historical context highlights how post World War II, rising female college enrollment pushed towards homogamy, but recent stagnation in male education has tipped the scales, with economists like Benjamin Goldman estimating that only 9.6% of Americans born in 1980 ended up in such unions where the woman holds a 4-year degree and the man does not. The article delves into the dynamics of these relationships, using anecdotes to illustrate persistent gender roles and economic realities. Examples include Mary, a geospatial studies graduate who became a stay-at-home mom while her less educated husband runs a welding business and out-earns her, and Sonia Ben Hedia Tuomi, a PhD holding linguist who is the breadwinner with her auto industry husband as a stay-at-home dad, facing societal awkwardness like assumptions he's stolen their child. Research supports that in hypogamous couples, women often still shoulder more childcare and domestic labor, experiencing a post-childbirth earnings penalty, though less severe than in equal education pairs, per studies in Austria and the World Values Survey. The author concludes that while hypogamy may signal women's empowerment amid a shortage of suitable male partners, it also underscores broader societal tensions, including political divides between genders, declining marriage rates, and narratives from the manosphere blaming feminism for men's economic woes, ultimately questioning whether this new marriage of unequals fosters true equality or reinforces imbalances. And before you guys jump on it, I wanted to point out that this isn't actually measuring how much they earn, but just their education. And I did a fireside chat yesterday with This Is Shah. We talked a little bit about dowry laws of the past and how a lot of the stuff that we're talking about now is very recent history in terms of like, you know, the way that marriages, dating, wooing, courtship, all that worked is very recent in the grand scheme of things. And what is happening now is, I believe, that this is trying to some degree to like cope with what's really on the ground occurring, which is that you have women who are getting every possible opportunity to get a higher level of degree in colleges, but they're most of the time not actually finding a job that, you know, like essentially pays that degree off. Like they're not starting a business. They're not like, you know, like really, let's say, ambitious in that particular field. And a lot of them just end up with regular jobs and a lot of debt, which that's what they usually bring to a marriage or relationship. if they can't pay it off. And so, for example, in that example they gave, where you had a geospatial studies graduate who became a stay-at-home mom while her less educated husband runs a welding business and out earns her, that sounds exactly like what I'm saying. So essentially,
Yeah.
he is picking up the bill for her, student loans, and but he happens to have like a functional job that's actually practical, like welding, which people need, as opposed to her geospatial studies degree, which I don't even know where. Like, I'm sure there are places where you can use it, but you see what I mean. So that this is not really
even
about women dating down, unless they see the education difference as a status difference, which is possible. So
even
anyway,
if
that's what I
even
want
if
to
she
say.
works in her degree, even if her degree gives her an income, like it takes 2 to 4 years to become a nurse. If you go for RN instead of LPN, you need a bachelor's, and it can even take 5 years to get that bachelor's if you are planning on specializing in anything. Like you want to be an RN, but you specifically want to work in mental health care, or you specifically want to work in OB-GYN or anything like that. Um, it that usually adds, like, here's what your electives are going to be, and you might want to take some extra. You might want to have a minor, right? But your average pay just for an RN, a regular RN, is between 40 and 50 an hour, right? It takes minimum 7 months to become a welder, and it's 50 to 60 per hour. So you earn $10 more per hour to be a welder than to be a nurse, and it takes you less time to become a welder than it does to become a nurse. Now, that's just basic education in welding. Like, you can, again, specialize, and it might take longer. And there are other welding programs that can lead to things like underwater welding, which is incredibly dangerous, but does pay quite a bit more. Um, but even then, it's pretty common to have a certificate or a degree in like 2 years, 1 to 2 years. Um, you can get a bachelor's, but for the most part, you don't have to. So yeah, you could even be working in your field as a woman, and depending on what degree you go to, if you go for a degree in early childhood education or early childhood care, and say you're going to be a daycare professional or a preschool teacher, you do not earn nearly as much as a welder. The amount, in fact, that you earn teaching at preschool is almost, the last I heard, it was barely over what people earn if they're working as a barista. So and you might spend, a huge amount of money to get there. So you have all this debt, and if you don't work for the same school for long enough, they won't pay it off. You are paying it off. And so yeah, it's not just in terms of money. Having a degree is not a guarantee of anything, and
Yeah.
that's if AI doesn't kill your job, or there isn't some other thing that keeps you from getting your job. If you study to do something that relies on hand and arm strength and being able to work on patients, you know, in a way that involves moving their bodies and lifting and applying pressure to their bodies and things like that, like chiropractic care, or being a massage therapist, or even sports medicine, and you're tiny, you might not get hired for that job. It's just the same as if you're, it's something that they shouldn't involve large men to get into either, because a lot of people will be like, no, I don't want that guy working on me, and it is a waste of the students' money to advise them to study something that they're not going to get a job in. Like, in that, we've seen that firsthand in my house. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but in any case, yeah, this whole thing of uh, hypo, I don't know, hypogamy, hypogamy, whatever you want to call it. I am pressing X on that one. So I
Yeah.
think most of the time when women get married, they have seen something that they think that they can benefit from. They're not. Women will say romance is the most important thing to them, but they're not romantic. They don't do romantic things for him. They just expect him to do romantic things for them, right? They don't even engage in a whole lot of gestures to indicate that they care at all, um, especially if they're working all the time. So it's bullshit. I'm calling bullshit on this. Now
Yeah.
that said, there is something that I would call hypogamy or whatever you want to say this needs to be pronounced as. And that is when women look at some dude who has no job, no prospects, no education, no interest in any of those things. The kind of guy that back in the 70s you would have seen him standing around on a street corner smoking a cigarette and making comments about the people walking by, right? And they decide that's the guy they want to date. He's what every person around him would call a loser,
Mm-hmm.
and they haven't seen something in him. Well, this guy's going places, he just hasn't done it right now. They haven't seen something in him that, well, this guy's especially nice or awesome. I love this thing about him, his this character aspect. None of that. It's just he's a rebel. He looks like maybe he's handsome. He's like that James Dean character, um, but he's completely, as far as the rest of society is concerned, completely useless to the community, and maybe even an inconvenience to the people around him. And his only redeeming quality might be that this girl has some interest in him, or they look at the mugshot of the guy that has the pretty eyes, and then I want that guy. Like that's what I would consider to be hypogamy.
Yeah.
Like you can, and unless she's a moron, in which case then she can't do better. But you can do better, and you're not gonna fix that guy. The only thing that could possibly fix that guy is if he decides he wants to be better and has some life experience that helps him figure out how, right? But that's not going to be you. In fact, anybody that gets into that guy is basically going to enable him,
Yeah.
and that's women will do that, right? And then they'll enable him for 5 or 10 years, and then they'll get mad, you know. They'll be like, all men are pigs, all men are this, all men are that, because they scraped the bottom of the barrel, and then they took the thing they found in the bowl of the spoon underneath the rest of what was at the bottom of the barrel, pulled that out, and went, I'm going to marry that guy. And I'm sorry, ladies, but you cannot turn a dipshit into a diamond by polishing his knob. That's
Yep.
just not the way it works. So, I'm, I don't believe this story. I think the story's bullshit. But the status exists, the behavior exists. It just doesn't look the way that they're making it out to look.
Right. It's another twisting of the
Yeah.
narrative to suit,
And
status
and the
quo,
reality
basically.
is, yeah, this the status quo. The reality is the reason they want to make it look that way is they want to put pressure on guys to start spending their money on university again. But
Yeah.
you should be
Probably.
very careful doing that. Like if you're thinking about going into medicine, yeah, that's not a bad idea. If you're thinking about going into um, any area that is you're seeing it replaced by AI right now, you might want to think twice. I wouldn't get an art degree today for sure. I wouldn't have gotten an art degree 10 years ago for sure. And think about whether or not you're likely to get hired in the thing that you're going to school for. And if not, get ready to open up your own business when you get out, because that's really your only other option. And that's in medicine. A lot of gender difference in pay is because of that. Women get out of med school and they go find a hospital or a clinic to get hired at or partner with or whatever. And men get out of med school and they might do that for a few years, but a lot of times they'll start their own private practice and then also work with a clinic or a hospital or whatever, but their primary practice is one that they control. And you set your own prices when you do that. Now insurance companies can negotiate, and Medicare can negotiate. Medicaid gives you an amount, and that's all you get from them. But this is pretty much across the board with various different ways of working. Women go look for a job when they get out of school. Men might work for someone else for a while when they get out of school, but if there's a chance that they can run their own business, they will. And they end up making more money in part because of that. So I don't know. This whole thing, I don't want to say it's another ad, but it's pretty damn close.
All right. Mike, you have anything to add about this?
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Not much really. Yeah, I agree. I don't think women are aiming down in terms of education level. It's just that there are more university educated women than there are men, because there's more women in university than men, almost across the board, at least in the West. So they really have no choice but to find a man who hasn't gone through that. And in any case, the education system turns you into a woke leftist feminist. And, I mean, the further you get into it, the more of a simp you become. And women will claim that they want, a woke leftist feminist guy, but in practice, they leave them drier than the Gobi Desert. So they kind of subconsciously know, I think, that educated men are largely pricks and wankers. And I think I'll leave it there. Yeah, stay away from universities and stay away from university students. Everyone. They're all wankers, including me.
Sure.
And we're just pulling up our destination, so this is good timing.
All right, well, that's that's it then. That's the last story. So we're going to go into the patron show now, and we're gonna try to go through this article. Maybe we won't. I don't know. There's lots of other stuff we could talk about. It all depends on whoever is in the after show chat with us. So if you want to come join us in the patron show and derail us from this conversation, and I welcome that, please go to feedthebadger.com/subscribe to join our community. $5 a month will get you into Discord, where you'll be able to watch all the additional content. And if you give it higher levels, you can actually join in the conversation with us in person, tell it to our face or our virtual faces. And hopefully we'll see you guys there. And I just want to say to the people in the vertical chat, because I guess I probably should have picked my title more carefully. I was kidding, obviously. Not a far-right, white supremacist, transgender mass shooter. The idea is absurd. That's why I put it. I thought it was funny and sarcastic. But a lot of people don't seem to get that. Maybe we've just become way too, I don't know, the sensitivity around these topics has gotten to the point where everyone takes everyone literally all the time, and you can't make a joke. So yes, obviously not a far right white I think Rosie O'Donnell was literally saying that the mass shooter was like a MAGA white nationalist guy, and she's didn't she move to Ireland or something? So anyway, yeah, you got PO'd, I guess. So, but it's fine. I'll just try to consider that the vertical chat is special and alter my titles accordingly so that I don't confuse you guys too much. So Anyway, thanks guys for coming on the show. Thank you to Mike for taking the time. And have a good flight to England. You're going to Scotland, right? Mike? Oh, he left. All right. Well, yeah. So anyway, we're going to wrap the show up there. Thanks guys for coming on. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave me a comment, let me know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today, and please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we'll talk to you guys in the next one. See you next Tuesday.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.